Hi, everybody. Welcome to this second part of Lesson 6 on Modern Existentialism. The name of this sixth lesson is The Existentialist Ethics. And in the previous video, in part 1, we ended with a question, a very important question. The question is, understanding that we have the capacity to be extraordinary, that we can do something at any time of the day, pretty much. We can think of something unconventional, even outrageous, random, crazy. We can think of something and do it, and we can pretty much shock people. Understanding we have this capacity, how do we know that our actions are aligned with good moral values, let's say? How do I know? Because, right, this is another thing we talked about in the previous video. That yes, we indeed have the capacity to be extraordinary, but it's also true that we have the capacity to be extraordinarily great or extraordinarily evil. Now, there are other extremes, like being extraordinarily stupid or extraordinarily naive or things like that, or artistic. But we're talking about morality here. So what is right and wrong in regard to other people, in our dealings with people, in our social environment, in our communities. What is appropriate and inappropriate to do. So in this video, I'm going to present to you a standard. So you have a good idea of how or when your actions and your life in general is in the right path. Your actions are actually good from a moral point of view, or not. Or when your actions are not good, maybe neutral, or maybe they're wrong, morally speaking. And this standard, friends, is objective. This is a very important word for me. The standard that I'm going to offer you here, that I'm going to present here, is objective. It's not something that, yeah, it works for some people, or that, you might have different views about the same standard. No, no. The standard is pretty solid, pretty reliable. And when I mean solid, I mean across cultures. I'm going to give you a standard that most people, if not everybody in the world, will say, yes, that's a good standard. So, okay, if you think, is that even possible? Okay, so bear with me and you'll see. Now, on the next slide, I'm going to talk about values connected to this standard that I'm going to present to you. And I have to be clear here to avoid confusion. Because in the past lessons, I've been using the word values in a very particular sense. I have used the word values as identity descriptors. Meaning what? Meaning things that you value very, very particularly, that pretty much makes you the person, the individual you are. Let's say, to illustrate, that you're passionate about 19th century British literature. I mean, that's a thing for you, right? You're really passionate. You know all the main literary figures of this period in Britain, and you know a lot about it. You pretty much read all the important books of the period in the category of literature. So you really know your stuff. You're really passionate about it. Okay. This is something that you value, obviously, tremendously, because you have invested, enough years or hours. You invest hours of your day reading British literature. This is something very particular to you. It is definitely not something that most people find appealing, or most people find like worth, I don't know, being passionate about. This is a very unique interest, a unique value. Now, if you keep considering what's uniquely important, valuable to you, right, you're going to come up with a very neat description of who you are as an individual, what makes you unique as a person. So I've been using in the previous lessons the word values in that way to describe the kind of individual you are. Here in this lesson, since we're talking about ethics, morality, okay, the word values is going to be used in a different way, in the moral way. And I already described what that means in the introductory video of lesson 6 in regards to my actions or my dealings with other people. Okay, so I'm going to use the word values in that sense, in the sense of standards, moral standards, things that are appropriate to do in a collective. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Because you see the difference, your personal values as identity descriptors can be pretty unique to you. They're very, very important things for you as an individual. But when we talk about moral values, okay, we're talking about things that are very, very important for everybody who is a member of a particular community or society. Those are the values we're going to talk about here. But not values that are important to a particular community, but to everyone, to the community of human beings. There you go. So these are universal values, universal moral values. And again, in case you're thinking, are there universal moral values? I thought morality was relative. Well, most people tend to think, perhaps not most people, maybe many people, tend to think that morality is relative. That this thing we call moral values, they are subjective. You have moral values, moral opinions. I have different ones, and everybody else might have different ideas about what's morally correct, morally valuable, or incorrect to do, and that's okay. Well, many people think that way, maybe most people, but that is not true, friends. So don't believe me, bear with me. Okay, we're going to start then this video, the lesson in this video, with an illustration that I use in my philosophy classes, my ethics classes. An illustration I call a story of two houses. Okay, this is what I'm going to try to achieve with this illustration. I'm going to try to prove to you, conclusively, I hope, that some things, values, moral values, are pretty objective, pretty reliable. That we recognize value when we see it. That it's not that tricky, relative, or subjective. That's what I'm going to try to attempt to do in this video and with this illustration. So, okay. In my philosophy classes, my ethics classes, I tell my students, okay, consider these two houses you see on the screen, right? And as you look at those houses, I'm going to tell you the story of the houses. And here's the story. Both of these houses were built the same year. So they're equally old. Obviously, the blue house, the house at the bottom, has gone through some renovations and that sort of thing. So it might look newer, but they're actually built the same year. So equally old. Okay, that's a fact about these two houses. Another fact is that these houses are found in the same neighborhood. As a matter of fact, they're not very far away from each other. Now, another fact of the story is that currently there are people living in both of these houses. Okay, even if you won't get that impression from the house at the top, the ugly house, you can tell it's pretty ugly, right? Without being judgmental, but I think everybody will agree with me. Okay, there actually are people living in both of these houses. That's another fact. And then we can add some important details to the story, like both houses have the same square footage, okay, the same land pretty much, and another fact is that the blue house has really beautiful flowers around, and it's a really, really beautiful house, the blue house, the house at the bottom. Now, that's the story. Now, with this story in mind, with these facts, I ask my students these 4 questions. First question. I ask them, in which house are we most likely to find good, happy, loving people? Okay, this is an assumption. Okay, we're going to make an assumption here based on the facts that I just shared. In which house, if you have to bet, what would be your bet? What would you say? Where are you most likely to find good, happy, loving people? When I ask my students, most of them, they say, well, Mr. Molina, it's pretty obvious that we're talking about the blue house. And when they give me that answer, I always ask, what makes you say that? Why do you think that's a good assumption to make? And they say, well, because in the blue house, you can see that the care is obvious in the house. Obviously, there are caring people living in this house. They care enough to have a house very beautifully painted, front yard, very nicely cut flowers around. So if there are people who care enough to have all these flowers and to have all this very neat, clean house, okay, that speaks of caring people living in the house. So I think it's a good assumption to make that people who live in the house are caring, they love their house, and therefore that it's an important element in that family, in the people who live there. Love. Okay. So I think that's a good assumption to make. And I'm not making this stuff up. This is actually what my students say when I ask them the question. Now, compared to the house at the top, right, the ugly house, I mean, yeah, there's not a whole lot of care evident in the house, but probably the opposite is true, the neglect. It's pretty obvious. Okay, that was question one. Question two, I asked them, in which house do you think has more work invested in? Okay, what do you think? Which house do you think has taken more work to be the way they are right now? Many of you probably might be thinking, these are stupid questions, but there's a very, very important point to make here, friends. So bear with me. Most of my students say, the blue house. Obviously, to have a house very beautifully painted with flowers around, with renovation, that's a lot of work put in the house. So that's why the house looks so beautiful. Okay, so and I ask, is that obvious? Every single one of my students say, yes, it is obvious. So if it is obvious to everybody, we're talking about objectivity, not subjectivity. We're talking about something that everybody sees and it's evident, obvious to everybody. Okay, so good. It's obvious there's more work in this house, in the blue house. Question number three. If, assuming this house are for sale currently, which house do you think is more expensive? Once again, my student would say, come on, Mr. Molina, really? Obviously, the blue house is a more expensive house, considering they're in the same neighborhood, same square footage, equally old. Obviously, you are not going to, if you're the owner of these two houses, you're not going to ask the same money for each house. No, you won't. Like if you're asking, let's say, $500,000 for the blue house, you're not going to ask the same for the ugly house. You won't. So it's pretty obvious to most people, and I keep appealing to that word, obvious, objective, reliable. Okay. Question number four. I tell my students, and I'm asking you, you can answer the questions yourself if you want to. If these houses represented your future, if this was a visual representation of your future, right? Which future would you like for yourself? How would you like your future to look like? Like the blue house or like the ugly house? Duh, right? Duh. But I have to ask the question because I have to make it evident to everybody. I need to hear everybody giving me the same answer. Seriously, which house would you choose? How do you like your future to look like? Like a beautiful blue house or like the ugly house at the top? Everybody says, I want my future to look like the blue house. Okay, so everybody giving the same answer. I say sometimes, why? And my students say, well, because there's more value in the blue house, and because there's more beauty, and we like good things, we like beautiful things, we like quality. And not only we like quality, because this is the main point, we recognize quality when we see it. This is not subjective, relative stuff. We do indeed recognize quality when we see it. You know, nobody is going to put the same price tag on these two houses. Like, that's absurd. No one will do that. It's evident that the blue house is more valuable, is more expensive. And people will prefer the blue house over the other house. There's more value. Okay? That's evident and that's objective. Okay, so I think I established that idea that value is pretty objective. We can recognize value when we see it. We recognize something that it's good, that it's cool, and from another thing that it's meh, that it's average, or that it's just simply ugly. When we recognize something that is just of no value. Okay, that's pretty easy to tell and recognize for every single person, I would say. All right, so having said that, having those ideas clear, next I'm going to present to you the standard that I was telling you about. And this standard, friend, consists in two sets of values. Two sets of values. And why two sets? Because I want to offer you like two poles, two extremes. I want you to have a clear idea that, because this is indeed true, that our actions can lean to either one of these two poles or extremes. One of them is the right one, is the one that is conducive to value and great things, beautiful things. The other one is not. It's conducive to the opposite of value, to misery, to all sorts of negative things. I'm gonna tell you more precisely what I mean by bad things. So let's go to the next slide. All right. Existential moral values. Okay. In case I forgot to ask this question in the previous slide, how is this connection possible? The connection of value. How do we know exactly what has value and what doesn't have value, and what accounts for the difference? It's true. It's evident that there is more value in the blue house than in the other house, the ugly house. What accounts for that difference? That's what I'm going to show you before addressing the standards, the two sets of values. All right. Here it is. Look at the picture on the screen. And what we have here is a fallen tree. Okay. Let's say this fallen tree is in your front yard. Okay? Question. How much value is there in a fallen tree? If you put a price tag to it, do you think people would be interested in buying your fallen tree? Maybe not. Maybe not. As a matter of fact, when people have a fallen tree in their property, what they normally do is they pay to have the tree removed because it's terrible, right? It makes the whole house looks, whatever, bad. And we pay so we don't have this eyesore in front of our property. So it's an annoyance, right? It's a pain in the neck having this tree, this fallen tree in the front. Value in itself, how much value is there in a fallen tree, friends? Zero. Zero value. It's actually taking value of your property. Because think about it. If your property is for sale, your house, and you have this fallen tree, okay, that fallen tree is taking value out of your property. So, gosh, it's not even zero value. It's minus whatever, $1,000, whatever it costs to have this tree removed. But in itself, you see it, the way you see it, a fallen tree has zero value. Now, what if you take this tree and you chop it and you make logs with it? Now, you don't have a fallen tree, you have a set of logs like you see on the screen. Question: do they have value? This set of logs, do you think they have value? Do you think you can put a price tag on these logs, and do you think somebody might be interested in buying them? The answer is absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. Now, there's value in these logs. People can use these logs for their fireplace and keep their home warm and nice, or they can use it for something else, for like making furniture, or for who knows what. You can actually do something practical with these logs. So now we have value. Fallen tree, zero value. Logs, some value. Let's say for the sake of the illustration, you put a price tag on these logs, $50. I would say that's a reasonable price, $50 for the logs. Okay. Now, what if you take these logs now and you make nice, fancy furniture with it, like you see on the screen? And not just fancy furniture, but artistic furniture. Something that makes your maybe dining room looks like really, really cool, exotic, or whatever, artistic. Look at the pieces on the third picture. Let's say you took these logs and you made that kind of furniture. Okay. Now, what price tag are you going to put on that furniture? $50? I don't think so. Nope. I've seen furniture like that, like very artistic and fancy and all, in some furniture places for like $500, friends, and maybe more. You can maybe find furnitures where it's actually more expensive because it's artistic, and not just artistic, it's original. There are no copies of these pieces, right? They're original pieces, so they're exclusive. Maybe $500 is cheap. Maybe I should go with $5,000. But you know what? For the sake of the illustration, let's say $500. Now, consider this. We went from a fallen tree, zero value, to logs, $50, to fancy furniture, $500. What in the world? What happened? What happened? What accounts for the difference in value? The answer, friends, are you ready? Work. Okay, many of you probably watching, okay, this is a no-brainer, obviously. Okay, it's not that obvious. To many people, perhaps to most people, it's not that obvious that work creates value. Let me say that again. Work creates value. Whatever thing you invest your time, energy, and work on, that thing acquires value. Think about it. And that value is evident, is objective. Like people see the value immediately. You don't have to be super smart to know that logs, $50, that's a pretty good price. And the furniture, that's not $50. That's not $50. You don't have to be a genius to know that the fallen tree, that's zero value. Nobody's going to pay anything for a fallen tree. So that's pretty objective. What changed? Value added through work. And friends, that's the reality. This is a fundamental reality of existence. Fundamental reality. Now, with this in mind, we can lay out the standard, the set of values that I was telling you about in the previous slide. We're going to call one set existential values. Those are the good values. That's the good standard, the ideal. The more we approach the ideal, the more our actions in our dealing with others, the more our lives as a whole approaches the ideal, the best life we're going to live, the more value our life is going to acquire, and the more extraordinarily great we're going to be. That's one pole. The other one is nihilism. We're going to call the other set of values nihilistic values. And that might seem like an oxymoron, because technically speaking, nihilism is the denial of value. Okay? And what do I mean by that? Now, people who are nihilistic, they see no value in life. Like nothing has intrinsic worth. Nothing. Nothing is worth pursuing. There's no point in life. Life is absurd. So the nihilistic mindset is something like, let's enjoy our life now while we can, because who cares about tomorrow? Tomorrow we're going to be dead. So that's it. Let's just have fun now. Nothing is valuable. Nothing is worth pursuing. This is the other extreme, opposite to the ideal. Why? Because, friends, nihilism leads to all sorts of dark places. And I'm not making this stuff up. This is very well studied, research documented. Nihilism indeed leads to psychopathologies. I mean, the literature, the psychology literature on this point, it's absolutely compelling. If you have a nihilistic mindset, if you see no point in life, no value in life, you're going to get, you are very likely to get depressed and even suicidal. You are likely to develop sociopathic tendency. As a matter of fact, I remember reading a study many years ago about the moral orientation of violent criminals in prison. By far, most of them are nihilistic in their orientation, their moral orientation. Meaning what? Meaning they see no value in life. These are people who live for the present. They don't care about the consequences, because in the end, what's the point? They're going to die anyways. That mindset, the nihilistic mindset, leads to psychopathologies, criminality, suicide. This is, friends, the opposite of the ideal. This is hell. This is the place you want to avoid. Now, why calling them nihilistic values in my lecture, in my presentation? Because if you think about it, people who are nihilistic, they have priorities, let's say. And the set of values that I'm going to show you are pretty much their priorities. And if they prioritize these things, it's because they value these things. So even though that may seem contradictory for some experts, philosophers, right, who think, no, nihilism is the opposite of value. Okay, whatever. We're going to call them nihilistic values. So here's the set. This is, okay, there we go. Existential moral values, represented by the plus sign. So in the existential values category, we have care, prosperity, knowledge, commitment, health, peace, forgiveness, humility, reason, generosity, future, truth. In the nihilistic set, the other pole, the other extreme, the bad stream, we have neglect, misery, ignorance, freedom, sickness, conflict, resentment, arrogance, violence, selfishness present, and falsehood. People who are nihilistic exhibit the nihilistic values. They exhibit that in their behavior. It's just obvious. They're people who are neglectful, people who don't care much about prosperity, people who are not very knowledgeable about things. They're not super smart people. Freedom, we all value freedom, but in this case, freedom means the opposite of commitment, non-commitment. Okay? Because, right, when you don't have commitments, you're pretty much free. Think about sentimental relationships, for example, right? When people say, no, I don't believe in marriage. I rather have my options open, right? And non-commitment translates sometimes as freedom. That's what I mean by freedom. So nihilistic people are not committed to anything, because there's no value in anything. So why commit to something? Why commit to a relationship, commit to a career, a job? What's the point? There's no value in a job. There's no value in a relationship, in nothing in life. Nihilistic people don't care much about their health. That's not something they prioritize, obviously. They're people with a lot of conflicts. A lot of conflicts. People full of resentment, people who are arrogant, tend to be violent, in some cases very violent. They're selfish, self-centered. These are people who prioritize the present. They live for the present only. Don't make plans for the future. What's the point? And people who are not very interested in the truth. So they just speak, and they speak the truth when it's convenient. That's what's important to them, what's convenient. Whether that is true or not, it doesn't matter. So that is the nihilistic mindset. If you think about it, friends, all our actions can lead to one of these two poles. And I'm going to make it evident here for you. But first, I want you to consider, to evaluate. We're going to use this standards, this set of values, to evaluate the houses we were talking about, the blue house and the ugly house. Because I want you to see how much these values are just, they represent the reality, The blue house. I'm looking at the first binary. I'm presenting these values as binaries, right? Opposites and stuff. I think it's a convenient way of looking at them. In the blue house, you can see how much the care is evident. We talked about it, right? Care is evident in the blue house. Neglect is absolutely evident in the ugly house. And that relates to work. How much work does it take to have a messy house, ugly, dirty house, room? How much work does that take? Zero. Easiest thing in the world. The easiest thing in the world is the being neglectful. But to care, okay, that takes work. But you know what? We learned already that whatever thing we work on, it's going to acquire value. But this is also the very, very cool thing about this theory of value in work. Not only the thing you work on acquires value, your life acquires value likewise, same way. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. I'm thinking of a years ago, I heard somebody in the military, a retired, I don't know, important person, general or something like that, who said this, right? And it was somewhat popular. People talked about it in the media. This was like in the 90s. He says something like, you want to make this world a better world, start by making your bed. And, okay, so to me, that sounded like, it makes some sense. Like I noticed like some wisdom behind that saying. You want to make this world a better world, start by making up your bed. And I think this is a thing in the military, among military people. Recently, this guy, what's his name? This Canadian psychologist, Jordan Peterson. He says something very similar. He became sort of a meme. He said a few years ago something similar. You wanna live a better life. You want to feel like your life is meaningful. Start by cleaning up your room. Clean up your room. That was his injunction. So you find meaning in life. What's the point. Like, how is cleaning my room going to make my life a better life? How explain the connection to me? Well, here it is. Work produces value. Work produces value. What has more value? A dirty, nasty, messy room, or a neat, clean, beautifully arranged room? Like, if you're looking for a hotel, right, and you're in a place visiting, and you see that the rooms in these two hotels, right, which one are you going to pick, right? The room that it's dirty, nasty, messy, or one that it's clean, beautiful, and everything looks perfect, organized? If you have these two choices, you're not going to pay the same, obviously, for each one of these rooms. You're going to pay more for the nice, beautiful, clean room. Why? I wonder why. Because it has more value. Why it has more value? Work. It takes work to have a beautiful, clean, organized room. Gosh, speaking of rooms, now I remember this one. Pretty cool. I have a 16-year-old daughter, and she's really into K-pop. She loves K-pop music, and all day talking about K-pop. I don't like K-pop. Don't tell her. But anyways, we were talking the other day, a video talking, because she lives with mom, and so we're in a video call, and she's showing me her room. She said, "Hey, Dad, look how I decorated my room." And she, with the camera, she showed me her room, and I was like, "Whoa!" I mean, she did an amazing job decorating her room. Like, she put like pictures and posters of K-pop people, and then some lights and some decorations and drawings. And you, even if you don't like, even if you care nothing about K-pop, looking at her room, you will recognize value. You will see, wow, that's a cool room. And also, you would understand now, right, that the room, it's cool because of work. My daughter, she spent hours, days actually, working on her room. So she has a really, really cool room. And you know what that does? When you go to your room and you see all these cool pictures and lights and all these beautiful arrangements, you know what that does to you? Makes you feel great. Makes you feel good, like you enjoy being in your room or in your house. If that's your house, right? You have your house beautifully clean, organized, decorated. Makes you feel happy. Work produces value. Value produces joy. Think about the opposite. Think about the opposite. Neglect, easy. Zero work equals neglect. Neglect equals the opposite of happiness. Unhappiness, depression, suicide, maybe. So you see, these are things that are evident in a suicidal person. That's evident. All the nihilistic values that you see on the screen, you'll see them like evidently displayed in their life, in their behavior, their words, the room, everything, the way they dress, everything. It's evident, the lack of value. And anyways, we're talking about the blue house. Blue house, blue house. And I'm looking at the next binary, prosperity, misery. If you think about it, prosperity, it's pretty evident in the blue house. Like, it's if you speculate a little bit, let's say, people living in the blue house, these people must be making good money. I mean, they must be in a nice financial situation for them to live in this house, to afford a beautiful house like that one, and afford the renovations and all the garden work around the house and all that. So that requires money. So people who live there are likely to be prosperous. Yes. In the other house, the ugly house, if people living in that house, can you imagine? Probably what, like homeless people? Because the house looked like abandoned. So maybe the people who live there are like homeless. Is there prosperity there? Zero. Misery is what it is. Next binary, knowledge, ignorance. You can say, you can argue at least reasonably, that there is knowledge implied in the blue house. Because people living in that house must know a thing or two about how to live in a good house, how to maintain a good house. They must know how to buy a house. And that's a lot of knowledge, right? That's to buy a house, you have to know, the requirements, and you need to know all sorts of things dealing with the house market, right? So it implies knowledge. Or if to live in a house like that means that you have a job and that you're good at something. You're good at something because it's a good job. You don't have a fast food restaurant job to live in a beautiful house, in a house of value. You must have a good job. So you must be good at something. You must have a lot of knowledge about something, some expertise. Maybe you're a great, doctor, or maybe you're a great, whatever, professor, or somebody, a scientist, an accountant, somebody with valuable knowledge. It's kind of evident, kind of. And but ignorance, that takes zero work to be an ignorant. Just continue scrolling down your TikTok app, and you think you're learning something. You're not learning anything. Anyways, I'm sorry if I'm so judgmental, right? Well, yes, but I'm doing it using a standard that is solid, objective, reliable. It's this standard, friends. This is so important. It's a representation of our reality. So, you think I'm being judgmental? You don't like my comments? Whatever. Keep living in your bubble. Keep living in your bubble. I don't think that's good, though. That's conducive to value. Because value is work. Continuing. Commitment, freedom. Oh, okay, I'm going to skip this one for now, but look at the next binary, health, sickness. Obviously, in a beautiful house, it's an environment more conducive to health. Okay, there's no dirt like in the old house. So that the sickness is sort of evident in the old house, not the old house, the ugly house. They're equally old. And health seems to be more evident in the blue house. I'm looking at just one. Okay, let's do, I don't want to go through every single binary, but look at the future present binary. Future and present. I would say that it's evident in the blue house that the people who live there are people who prioritize the future. These are people who, if they have a good job, a good profession, they're knowledgeable, they have some expertise, it's because they acquire that expertise in some institution, school, university. And you're only going to go to university with the idea of getting a career. You're only going to do that if you prioritize your future. Because think about it, the option is, why go into school? Like, so I can get a degree in 4 years, 6 years, 7 years? I have to wait 7 years so I can see some benefit of just going to school every single day? Nah. No, let me just hang out with my friends now. Who cares about school? That is easy to do, friends. But easy means no value. Easy, no work, no value. So, arguably, people who live in the blue house care about the future, make plans for the future, save money for the future. To be able to buy a house, you need some savings. You need some money. So that means that you are someone who think about the future. So, how about that one? And present, if you prioritize present, friends, you're going to live in misery. Live in misery. Now, commitment. Let me go back to commitment, freedom. Commitment, non-commitment. This is a very important one because people are not aware that commitment is work. Work and sacrifice. That's a word that I totally forgot to to use before. Because if you think about it, work and sacrifice are very, very closely related. Very closely related. Because when you invest your time, let's say chopping off that tree, that fallen tree, so you make logs with it. Okay, you are doing a sacrifice. You're working, yes, but you're sacrificing leisure time, time that you might be doing something else, maybe just chilling, relaxing, watching whatever, Netflix or something. You're sacrificing that time for, to in order to create value, chopping off that tree and create value out of it. So you see what I'm saying? Work and sacrifice are closely related. And the thing about commitment and people not liking commitment a whole lot, it's because it implies, it requires that work and sacrifice. So, and that's not easy, right? And for perhaps many people, it's not pleasant. It's not appealing. What? Sacrifice? Do I have to sacrifice my time, my life, my priorities? When you make a commitment, yes. Yes. Commitment also evident in the Blue House because, friends, for you to be able to have a career, we're talking about the people who live in the Blue House, right? We already speculated they're professionals. That means people who made a commitment with their education and people who are committed to their careers, committed to their work schedules. Because you know what, friends? If you're not committed to your work schedule, and if you're late or you miss work, okay, you're gonna be kicked out. You're not gonna have a stable source of income, which is what you need to buy a beautiful house. So it's sort of evident, the commitment in the people who live in the Blue House, even if we haven't seen the people, right? But it's sort of evident. This is something safe to assume. These people are good with commitments. Your credit score, pretty much that's what it measures. It measures your degree of commitment regarding your financial obligations. That's what it is. That's what it is. If you're really committed to your financial obligations, your debts, loans, whatever, if you're somebody who never misses a payment, always pay on time, you're going to have a nice high credit score. That is, you're going to have more value. But I'm telling you, it's work to commit, to be there every single day, to not be late for work. That it's not just, being, some of us struggle with that, right? With being on time. But well, guess what? When you're on time, you're adding value to your life. That is the right thing to do. Be on time. Be committed. Committed in your job, professional commitments. Committed to people, to your friends, to sentimental relationships. With friendship, it's interesting because we have all sorts of friends. Good friends, okay friends. We have friends we hang out with when we want to have fun. But the best friends, the ones who have more value in our eyes, are the ones who are more committed to the friendship. Those are people who we know we can count on. Those are people we know they're going to have our back. That if we need them at some time, they're going to be there. Those committed friends, those are the ones we value most. Why? Because commitment adds value to your life. It's work, it's sacrifice, but it's worth it. Adds value. So, I remember recently, we were doing this analysis in my class, and a student asked me this question, brilliant question. I loved it. He said, Mr. Molina, I have 3 friends, and I really like them. The 3 of them, I think they're equally valuable in my eyes. So how is there an objective way of seeing which one is actually more valuable? And I said, yes, there is a way. He said, what? Which one of them you spend more time with? Okay. And he looked at me like, you already got the answer. He already had the answer. The one you spend more time with, you're investing time on that friendship. You're sacrificing time. Okay, that is the friend who has more value. Boy, I'm telling you, friends, when I had this realization a few years ago, it just absolutely blew my mind. It made me understand everything I see, everything I perceive, everything. Made me understand my relationship with my parents, with my siblings. Everything relates to work, sacrifice, and value. So, okay, commitment. Your sentimental relationships. Okay, this is a heavy one because especially men don't like commitment when it comes to sentimental relationship. They don't want to get married. No, that's not necessary. I don't believe in marriage. Well, but there is something women do know. Maybe they're not aware, but they intuit it. They feel it. If let's say, I'm somebody's girlfriend, we've been, boyfriend, girlfriend for years now, and I'm waiting for that proposal, and it's not coming. You know what I'm thinking? This guy does not see a whole lot of value in me. And I see him as doesn't have a whole lot of value. I love him, but I'm not fully on board with everything with this guy. But making the commitment, that adds tremendous value to the relationship and to you as a person. Tremendous value. And women perceive this when they're waiting for that proposal from their boyfriend and it's not coming. They feel like they're not good enough. That he might say he loves you and everything, and he might be like really sweet and really special, but he's afraid of the commitments, and that means that he does not see a whole lot of value in you. I'm sorry to disclose this news to you, ladies, maybe watching and feeling right now brokenhearted because of this realization. But you know the difference. You know the difference when a guy introduces you to his girlfriend. He says, "This is my girlfriend, my fiance." You know it's different when the same guy says, "This is my wife." Okay, those are not the same thing, even if it's the same person. Girlfriend today, maybe next year she's a wife. Not the same relation, not the same value. Now the person has more value because she is married to the guy. That's a major commitment that it's major value in your life. Major value. So don't be so afraid of commitment, and especially in sentimental relationships. I'm not advocating for just going out and marry anybody. I'm actually going to give you a great advice regarding sentimental relationships at the very end. So bear with me, because I'm going to tell you exactly how to find the right person. Actually, a student asked me in class, "Mr. Molina, how do I find the right person?" The heck, why don't we address it right now? Okay, this young lady asked me in class during this lecture on the existential moral values. She asked me, "Mr. Molina, I'm dating this guy, and I'm not sure this is the right guy. And you're talking about things being evident, the value in a person being evident, because the value in a person is as evident as the blue house. It is more valuable compared to the ugly house. That evident is the value in a person." And she said, "How is that evident? This guy, I've been, dating him, going out with him for a few months." And I said, that's more than enough to evaluate the guy, to know if this is the right guy. How? Look at the set of values here. Look at these binaries. And tell me which ones are really evident in his life. Let's say his car. Consider his car. I said, does your boyfriend have a car? And she said, yes, he has a car. Okay. Don't answer the question to me. Answer it to yourself. I said, what kind of car is it? Does it show prosperity or misery? I'm looking at that binary, prosperity, misery. Is it a good, beautiful new car or like new car? Or is it an ugly old car? Or maybe somewhere in between, right? But if it's something in between, does it approach more to the to value, to prosperity, or to the opposite pole, to misery? That's one thing. Number two, look at the knowledge-ignorance binary. Is your boyfriend knowledgeable about something? Like, is there a topic, something that he often talks about, and you can tell like this guy knows a lot about it, and you're like, whoa, listening to him, how much he knows about whatever, computers or anything. You'll hear him talking about computers, and you're like, whoa, this guy really, really knows about computers, like a lot. He knows how to program computers, how to fix computers. Is something of that in him? Or is his conversation like the usual things? Talks about, whatever, sports, movies, the weather. So how much is that evident in him? This guy knows something. He knows something really well. How much is knowledge evident? I'm looking at health, sickness. That's an important one. Health, sickness, health and sickness. This guy you're going out with, this actually happened, okay? I'm not making this stuff up. I said, this guy you're dating, how much does he care about his health? Does he eat healthily? Like, is mindful of what he eats, not abusing junk food? Or is he somebody who exercises, go to the gym regularly? I said, don't answer the question to me. Or is he someone who does nothing of that, or is not that into that stuff? That means if it's not into health, there's no value there. No value. Oh, peace and conflict. Peace and conflict. Sometimes all we have to do is just pay attention to what the person says, right? And I said, this is a red flag. And for you, viewer, you're dating this guy or this woman. But let's say the guy, we'll stick to a guy. You're dating this guy, and you ask him about his parents or his dad, and he does not want to talk about his dad. He says, no. Please, let's talk about something else. I don't want to talk about my dad. Whoa. Okay, friends, that's a major, major red flag. That speaks of conflict, not peace. That speaks of, look at the next set, that speaks of resentment, not forgiveness. That is zero value. For resentment, conflict. You want to go out with someone who is forgiving, someone who has good dealings with people, gets along with people. That is value. Why? Because it's more work. It's a lot more difficult to get along with everybody. But to be in conflict with everybody, that's easy. So I said, watch out with that. And humility, arrogance, you can look at those, right? This is another very, very good one. Future, present. I said to her, does your boyfriend make plans for the future? Does he talk about things he wants to do, maybe a business he wants to start in the future? Is he thinking about going to school? Is he going to school? Is there a plan for the future? Does he have a clear idea of where he wants to be in 5 years? Or does he only talk about, now, let's just have fun. Let's just go out. I love being with you, hanging out with you. Is it all about the present? What he talks about, what he does with you? Okay, so there you go. There you go. We can consider the other binaries, but I think that's enough for you to have a good idea, very clear idea of what kind of person you're hanging out with. You're dating, or whoever, a friend. Now, now, this is this can go both ways. You can use these values to assess people, to assess your relationship with people, but you also want to use them to assess yourself, your own actions, your own life. How much does your life show these traits, these values, the existential values? How much are those values evident in your behavior, in your room, in your car, in everything? How much are you a person who prioritizes health, peace? How much are you committed to speak the truth? Or how much are you committed to the future? You make plans. How much are you someone who forgives? How caring are you with people, with your own things, right? Your room, your car. How knowledgeable are you about anything? And so on, and so on. Use these values to assess yourself and your actions. Because you know what? All of your actions can lean to one of these two poles. Let's say it's late. Let's say it's around 5 p.m. and you're already thinking dinner. You're getting hungry and you start thinking dinner. What am I going to have for dinner? Here's a nice choice that we make every single day, right? What am I going to have for dinner? Okay, you have a choice to make here. What is it going to be? What are you going to prioritize? Health or the opposite? What is it going to be? You have some vegetables in the refrigerator. You can make some salad with it. Gosh, making a salad and chopping off vegetables. But there is also frozen pizza in the freezer. So what is it going to be for dinner? Pizza or salad? Which one is more conducive to value? You know the answer already, right? You know the answer. So the same thing with everything. In your words, in the way you speak. How much are your words conducive to peace? Or how often do you get in trouble for what you say, for the kind of things you tell people? So if you're the kind of person who you don't get along with anybody at your workplace, oh boy, that is very little value. Very little value in your life. Now, of course, the ideal, and nobody lives an ideal. Nobody's perfect, right? But we do want to get closer to the ideal the most we can. The closer you are to the ideal, the better your life is going to be and the more value you will acquire. This is absolutely, objectively true. So don't have to take my word for it. And these values, friends, these values are acknowledged worldwide. Worldwide. These are not relative. They're not. Go to any place in the world and ask anybody, hey, what's better, being caring or being neglectful? What's better, a dirty room or a clean room? Like, really? What is better, being prosperous or living in misery? You're going to ask that question? What is better, to be knowledgeable about something or to be an ignorant, to be an idiot? I don't know what kind of answer you might get out of that one. Friends, these values are universally acknowledged. So this is why you see moral values speaks of collective values, things that are going to make you a great person in the community you live in your society. You're going to be a force of good in the world. The more you approximate the ideal, the existential values, the more your actions in your life are an expression of those existential values. The opposite, you already know. If you exhibit the nihilistic values, you might end up in prison, depressed, in misery, and you might be whatever, homeless person, right? I mean, think about a homeless person. How much value is there in a homeless person? How hard it is to be a homeless person? Think about it, right? Because the thing about homeless people is it's just one thing that they prioritize above everything else, right? Non-commitment or freedom. These people, they don't want to work. No, they don't want to follow a schedule. They don't want to commit to anything. They want to do whatever they want. They want to work whenever they want. They want to sleep if they want to sleep all day, they will sleep all day. If they want to be lazy, if they want to whatever they want, they can do. They have all the freedom to do live the way they want within their limited, very, very limited means, right? They cannot afford anything nice, because that means they need to create value. But they don't want to do that because it's hard work. They don't want to work. No work, no value. No work, no sacrifice, no value. This is probably one of the biggest paradoxes in existence, in reality. Here's the paradox. We all want an easy life. This is something everybody desires. Oh, if my life were easy, right? If I was a millionaire and I would just travel the world and don't have to worry about anything anymore. Live an easy, peaceful life. The paradox is, though everybody wants that kind of life, that is the most meaningless life you can conceive. The easy life, zero value life. Zero value, zero meaning. No meaning. That's a pathetic life. Isn't that a contradiction? A paradox? But that is, friends, that is the structure of reality. In our world, in our universe, what makes value is work and sacrifice. So, okay, we talked about the blue house, right? How the blue house, these existential values are evident in the blue house, and the other values, the nihilistic values, are evident in the ugly house. And we talked about how to assess relationships, right? Friends, boyfriends, how to assess ourselves. Let me finish with this example, though. My ex-wife. I got divorced about 8 years ago, and boy, that was brutal, brutally painful. And we have two girls, and at the time they were quite young, so they really suffered, and I suffered. And friends, hating my ex-wife was the easiest thing for me to do. Like, I already felt it back then. The hatred, the resentment. And people talk to me, people, right, close people. They told me, you have a case. You can take her to court and you can get the custody of the girls because of A, B, and C your ex-wife is doing, or your still wife. So you have a very strong case. And for me, that was a very, very appealing possibility, because I wanted revenge. Because without giving you the details of the story, I thought it was just something absolutely wrong for her to do. But at the moment, I was really, really angry and hurt. And I considered these possibilities and taking her to court, getting the custody of the girls. But I knew that would get into a very, very nasty territory. And I thought about these values. And I thought, my girls, they're going to suffer if we go through a nasty divorce. And I thought about the future. I said, no, I want them to live despite the divorce. I want them to be happy. So I thought about them. I was, in that sense, generous rather than selfish and self-centered. I prioritized my girls' well-being, and then I thought about forgiveness and resentment. And that was not easy, friends. That was not easy. Assessing my marriage, and I got to a point where I called my ex-wife, and we had a 2-hour conversation in which I asked her for forgiveness because I realized a lot of things that I didn't do, and others that I did that were not nice. So I guess I acknowledge my blame, my responsibility on of the divorce, and that was not easy to do. And what else? What am I looking for? Peace. I prioritize peace over conflict. I said to myself, and I remember this particular conversation I had with a family member who he didn't understand what I was doing. He was like, "Come on, how can you be civil with this woman?" And I was like, "I'd rather be civil. I'd rather get along, and I'd rather prioritize peace over conflict." And long story short, my ex-wife and I now, currently, we have a great relationship. And friends, it's so great that friends that we have in common, they have often commended me for it. Like, they have praised me for the kind of relationship we have. And they're like, they have told us, like, people have told us, you guys are amazing. Like, you are an exception to the rule. Like, normally most divorced parents, they hate each other, right? But you guys are incredible how much you talk and how much you agree on things, especially regarding the girls. That was not easy, friends. That was not easy, but it was the right thing to do, morally speaking. Why? Because it is the thing that adds value to life. And it added value to my life. It added value to my relationship with my ex-wife, added value to the quality of the relationship I have with my daughters. It was a total win. Total win. But it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. So the path of value, of rightness, happiness, is a difficult path. It's a path of sacrifice and work. But friends, it is the right path. The easy path, the easy life, is going to add zero value to your life. So that's your choice. How are you going to live your life? Are you going to maximize value in your life? Or are you going to walk near the nihilistic path? Knowing what that means and knowing the consequences of the path. That's the easy path. Now I'm reminded of a famous story. Was it a story or an allegory, parable, whatever? Jesus in the New Testament, he said famously, he said, "Wide is the road that leads to perdition, but narrow is the road that leads to salvation. And very few walk along the path of salvation, righteousness. Most people walk the easy path. But that's not where goodness and value is, friends. That's not where it is. So now you know, I hope. Thank you for watching. We have one more video before closing lesson number 6. So I hope to see you then. Bye-bye.